This is the third take for this video because the first time I forgot to record it and the second time I didn't have enough space on my phone. So hopefully the third time's a charm. In this video I'm going to talk about the quadratic formula again. It's still part 1 and this is probably the first time you actually see it. The quadratic formula is basically used to solve quadratic equations. We've already solved quadratic equations last year, and I wanted to start with one of those examples. So for example, if you had x squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0, then you had to look for a product and a sum, and then you could say, for example, that 8 is the sum, 12 was a product. So the two numbers that you were looking for were 6 and 2, because 6 times 2 is 12, and 6 plus 2 was 8. So if you factorize this, you'll get x plus 6 and x plus 2 equals 0. And then there was this helpful thing that whenever you have two things multiplied and the answer is 0, then either a is 0 or b is 0, which means that in this case x plus 6 is equal to 0 or x plus 2 is equal to 0, and if x plus 6 is 0, then x is equal to minus 6 or minus 2. Okay. So why do we need the quadratic formula? Well, sometimes it's really hard to actually find these two numbers. And even though some of you are really good at arithmetic, there are just cases in which it is very hard. For example, if we're looking at x squared plus 5x plus 12 equals 0. Then most of you would probably try 1 times 12, well, then the sum is 13, 2 times 6, then the sum is 8, 3 times 4, then the sum is also 12, but the sum is 7. So then you're probably stuck. So is there an easier way to do this? Well, I'm going to introduce you to something which is called the discriminant. And this discriminant is basically a tool which helps you to check, can we solve this thing or not? And it has a formula. Usually it's abbreviated with the capital D, and the formula is b squared minus 4ac. And then you are probably wondering, okay, what's a, b, and c? Well, the general form of a quadratic equation was ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So those are the same letters. So in this case, our a is 1, b is 5, and c is 12. That means that we are able to calculate the discriminant. So if we try and do that, then the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac, and this is a formula that you will actually have to memorize. 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12. This is 25 minus 48, which is minus 23. So what does this number actually tell us? What does minus 23 mean in this case? Well, when we're trying to find the discriminant, there is like a small table which you will have to memorize, and that has to do with the results of calculating it. Well, if the discriminant is negative, 0 or positive, then there are three different situations. If the discriminant is positive, you will find two solutions. If it is exactly 0, there will be one solution. And when it is negative, there are no solutions. So in this case, it was actually impossible for you to find those numbers. So, because our discriminant is negative, there are no solutions. Well, then you're probably wondering, if we would have calculated the discriminant over here, would we have found two solutions? Well, we can try. Then we're using the same formula again, b squared minus 4ac, and then the b is 8, so this would be 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12, which would be 16. 16 is positive, so there should be two solutions, and we actually already found them. Those were minus 6 and minus 2. So the discriminant is not the quadratic formula yet, but you needed to use the quadratic formula. Basically, the quadratic formula is a formula which forces you to find the solutions, and it's a lot more difficult than the product sum method. There's a reason why the product sum method is in the second year and the quadratic formula is in the third year. But the advantage of the quadratic formula is it helps you to see how many solutions are there, and if there are solutions, you can always calculate them. So what is the quadratic formula? And this is something you will have to memorize as well. I usually like to write it down in this way. X equals minus b, and it's still the same b that we already talked about, and then plus or minus the square root of d divided by 2a. And some of you are probably already thinking, what does plus minus mean? Usually when they're right next to each other, it means plus minus is the same as minus, but in this case, this is actually me trying to write down two formulas into one formula because I'm actually somewhat lazy. In your textbook, they give it as two separate formulas. X equals minus b plus the square root of d over 2a. And the other part is x equals minus b minus the square root of d over 2a. So why are there two formulas? Well, there can be two solutions as well. But what if there's one solution? You have to use this one or this one. Well, if you think about it, when d is 0, then the square root of 0 is still 0, so you're not adding anything to minus b. So those two formulas will give you the same answer. Now you also might see that if d is negative, why there are no solutions? Because if you fill in a negative number in this square root, there are no real solutions. So let's see what happens if we use these two formulas for this equation. I'm going to erase the middle one. So if we're looking at x squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0, then a equals 1, b equals 8, and c equals 12. We already calculated the discriminant, so I'm not going to do that again. And now I'm going to use these two formulas. So let's start with the first one. Then x should be equal to minus b, which is in this case minus 8, plus the square root of 16, divided by 2 times 1. Minus the square root of 16 is 4, so minus 8 plus 4 is minus 4. Minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. Hey, luckily for me, those numbers actually match. So now the pressure is actually starting to mount because this second formula will have to give us -6 or I'm going to lose my job. And we also have an audience watching, so that, yeah, I'm not sure if I can do this any longer. So B is still -8, D is still 60. Hopefully you already noticed that the plus turned into a minus, and 2 times A is still 2 times 1. Well, the square root of 16 is still 4, so -8 minus 4 is -12. -12 divided by 2 is -6. So, hey. And of course, this way of calculating things is a lot harder, but this does give us a solution at any time. Hopefully, this is somewhat clear. Are there any more questions? I told my laptop to ask questions if they have, but since it's still silent, it means they're either nervous and don't want to ask questions, or they actually understand what I'm saying, which actually has a very low probability, but hey. Then good luck with the homework.